Hello lady and gent gamers, Jarek Defiler the Patient Gamer here to discuss the well-known and highly sensual Vampire Survivors. But before we get started, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell for updates on future videos. Mainly created by Italian developer Luca Poncogalante, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his name, Vampire Survivors is an extraordinarily fun little indie action roguelike that's basically what I like to call a reverse bullet hell. Meaning, in this game, you are the bullets. Unlike many other bullet hell roguelikes, such as Enter the Gungeon, Vampire Survivors has a much simpler combat system in that you don't actually have any interaction with your character other than movement. The reason behind this is that all attacks are automatic and cooldown based. Where you mainly come into play is keeping your character alive by running around the battlefield and deciding on what items you wish to build. Now that might sound a little boring to many of you, but quite the contrary, it's actually fairly robust and highly addictive. No doubt the addictive nature comes from Ponko's work with slot machines in the gambling industry, where he gained knowledge of triggering dopamine hits with big flashy lights and cool graphics, all of which are abundant in Vampire Survivors. That said, don't let the combat simplicity fool you, because there is actually a decent itemization system underneath it all. Like any roguelike, as you progress in each map, you gain items that make you stronger. In Vampire Survivors, these fall into three categories: attacks, utility, and protection. Naturally, attack items are the most fun and diverse, ranging from simple fireball wands to this holy book that flies around you like some sanctimonious tome of righteous death with the speed of a MiG-25 fighter jet. Utility items will find you buffing speed on your movement as well as your attacks to cooldown reduction or increased area of effect size. Protection is the most straightforward. You'll get things like health increase, shields, or flat damage reduction. Nothing too fancy, but useful nonetheless. But the most fun part of this is, as you progress in the meta aspect of Vampire Survivors, you will unlock new items and thus new combo evolutions with said items. For instance, maxing out your fire wand with spinach will upgrade the attack, making the fireballs gigantic and able to pass through walls and enemies, while maxing out the King Bible and evolving it with a spellbinder will cause it to never stop swirling around you in a most speedy fashion with increased knockback and size. Tons of fun. And there is a hefty amount of items to choose from and experiment with. As of this recording, I have roughly 46 hours in the game, and have yet to unlock all the items, so plenty of content to keep you going. And the diversity of items allows for a great variety of builds. You will find yourself starting each map with your default attack, feeling like a useless, bare-bones Neanderthal, but by the end of said map, you will become this, and you will be a god. Loads of sexy, juicy fun. Granted, some builds will be better than others, also depending on the map. But I have never found any build I've played with to be entirely lackluster. Once you get the item evolutions, generally you can make almost any build work, but some will be far more difficult than others. That said, I haven't tried everything, so maybe there are some builds that simply will not get you to the end of some maps. I don't know. But in my experience, I haven't had too much trouble once I figured out what the game is all about. Outside of the item unlocks, you also have character unlocks that will each bring something unique to the table. For instance, one has extra cooldown reduction, another has increased item pickup radius, while another will be a dog that apparently shits flowers. Lots of unique characters to unlock that each have their own weapons and stats to contribute to specific builds. And there's a bunch of them. I still have a lot to unlock, but Mortaccio, the skeleton dude, is my favorite so far. Not only do you have characters and items to unlock, but there's also a good map pool to choose from and unlock as well. Each map has its own challenges and unique enemies that are, well, quite frankly, not as diverse as one would think. Yes, each monster type has its own health pool, resistances, speed, and whatnot, but at the end of the day, they all just walk towards you and you have to avoid them. There are a few mini-boss types that will shoot projectiles at you or rush at you and blow themselves up, but ultimately, the enemies are just swarm fodder there to be slaughtered by the player. I wish there was a bit more unique enemies that made you think more, but that's simply how the game was designed. Still, it's not a big enough criticism to dwell on. That said, the maps themselves I found to be fun and unique challenges that keep the gameplay loop fresh. Some maps will be free open range, others will be basically corridor shooters, and some will be full of obstacles making things a bit more difficult. You can even tweak the maps with hyper or hurry mode, as well as choose the music. All in all, I really enjoy the different maps and haven't found one that I actually dislike. Now to all the min-maxing completionists out there, Vampire Survivors is the game for you. If you like 2D pixel graphic roguelikes anyways. There are tons of achievements to unlock along with all the other unlockable content. You got bounty achievements, score achievements, character success achievements, and more. Each character even has their own checkboxes for which maps they completed as well. Personally, I'm not a min-maxer and I could care less about achievements, so I haven't focused on it. But I know there are those of you out there that love that aspect of gaming, and Vampire Survivors won't leave you wanting. Now, in regard to criticism, as I stated before, it would be nice to have a few more monsters that shoot rather than just swarm. But that's not a deal breaker. As it stands, with the sheer number of enemies that pop up on screen during the course of a match, it's understandable to not have more added effects and attacks because, quite frankly, the screen gets really crowded. So, I get it. Screen clutter is a problem. There are some issues with the hitboxes of static assets in the game, such as trees, walls, bushes, and whatnot. I find myself often getting stuck on these when my character isn't actually visually touching them. Now that I expect it though, I can usually avoid it, but it's still a problem. Once you get into the last 5 minutes of a map, the game may start lagging drastically. There is an option to start the game with a GPU lag fix for more low-end hardware, so maybe that fixes it for some, but I have been reading that some people with some high-end hardware are still having problem with lag issues, and some even say that using the GPU lag fix makes it even worse. I don't know, for me it did not seem to help that much, but it did seem to help a little bit on some maps, but it can still lag a bit despite me having a pretty decent rig. This may be situational. Overall, it seems like it only lags for me with very specific enemies, ironically the wizard-looking guys that shoot projectiles at you. It would be nice for the item collections tab to have more information, such as what each item evolves with, what type of damage they do because some enemies may be resistant, maybe some damage numbers as well, little things like that. Mouse and keyboard are rough. I highly recommend playing Vampire Survivors with a controller. It's just far superior. Not the best news for us PC gamers, but generally we always have a controller or two on hand anyways. I've seen some people criticize the 2D pixel graphics because that is what so many indie developers do nowadays, but there's a reason for that. For one, it's cheaper, two, it's far easier to develop with. 3D graphics come with a host of challenges that most indie devs cannot take the time to remedy. Vampire Survivors was ultimately developed by one guy. Sure, he had a few people help here and there, but it was mostly done by Ponko. Asking one person to take on the task of 3D graphics, which also entails physics, textures, modeling, asset manipulation, animations, and just downright bugginess among other things, is not a reasonable request in my opinion. Respect that they took the time to make a game for you to enjoy, even if you're tired of pixel graphics. At the end of the day, gameplay matters more. Which leaves me with my recommendation. The answer is yes. Vampire Survivors is a cheap, fun roguelike with simple mechanics but a deeper than first glance itemization pool and unlock system. It hits that addictive part of the brain in just the right ways without making you feel like you wasted your time grinding with no reward. Because the fun gameplay and experimenting with builds is the reward in my amazingly awesome humble opinion, and for $5 off sale, you get plenty of bang for your buck. The DLCs are worth it too! Now before I end the video, here's a taste from the game's cool soundtrack, composed by Daniel Vandara, Filippo Vicarelli, and Will Davies. Again, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing names. This track is titled Hide and Steal. This has been Jarek Defiler, the Patient Gamer. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. You all have a great morning, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on where you are. Take it easy now.